Luna was born in a time when the old world still remembered magic. The forests of her homeworld stretched for thousands of miles, filled with ancient trees and creatures that had never seen the touch of modern technology. She grew up learning the ways of her people, the elves who valued harmony and patience above all else. Her parents were healers, gentle souls who spent their days helping others and their nights studying the stars. But Luna was different from birth. While other elf children played with music and art, Luna asked questions about the world beyond the forest. She wanted to know about the mountains far away, the oceans that covered half the planet, and the sky that seemed to hold infinite mysteries. By the time she was 20 winters old, she had become a scout, exploring the outer edges of the known lands. It was during one of these journeys that everything changed. Luna found the crashed vessel hidden deep in a canyon, its hull smoking and broken. At first she thought it was empty, just another piece of dead metal from the sky. But as she climbed inside, she heard a sound. It was small and weak, almost like a whimper. In the deepest part of the ship, buried under pieces of broken machinery, Luna found 2 eggs. They were warm to the touch, glowing with a faint orange and blue light. She had never seen anything like them before. The eggs were large, each one as big as her head, and they seemed to pulse with a heartbeat all their own. Luna made a decision that day that would change her life forever. She wrapped the eggs carefully in cloth and fur, keeping them warm against her body as she made her way back to the village. Her parents were shocked when they saw what she carried. Her mother tried to convince her to leave them in the mountains to let nature take its course, but Luna refused. She knew in her heart that these creatures were meant for something important. For 3 months, Luna cared for those eggs like they were her own children. She kept them warm by sleeping beside them. She studied every mark and pattern on their surface, trying to understand what kind of creatures they were. She read ancient texts in the village library, looking for any mention of flying beasts that might match the descriptions she had formed in her mind. Then one night, as Luna lay sleeping beside the eggs, the first one cracked. A small head emerged, covered in wet scales that gleamed orange and gold. The creature was tiny, no bigger than a rabbit, with wings folded tight against its body. It made a sound that was part chirp and part musical note. Luna opened her eyes and found herself staring into 2 bright amber eyes. She named him Ember because of the way his scales seemed to hold fire within them. As the days passed, Ember grew quickly, soon becoming large enough to perch on Luna's shoulder. His personality matched his appearance. He was bold and fierce, always wanting to explore and test his abilities. He would practice flying in wide circles around the village, and the other elves began to talk about the girl who had brought a dragon into their home. A week after Ember hatched, the second egg cracked open. This time, a pale blue head emerged, and Luna could see immediately that this dragon was different. Where Ember was loud and energetic, this new dragon was calm and observant. She had a grace to her movements, even as a newborn. Luna called her Frost because of her cool demeanor and the way frost seemed to form wherever her cold breath touched. Frost grew differently than Ember. While Ember wanted to fly and play and explore, Frost preferred to watch and learn. She would sit beside Luna for hours, studying the world with intelligent eyes. Luna felt like Frost was reading her mind, understanding her thoughts before she even spoke them out loud. The 2 dragons grew together, learning from each other and from Luna. Ember taught Frost how to be brave and take risks. Frost taught Ember patience and how to observe before acting. Luna taught them both the language of her people, the old words that carried power and meaning. She spent every moment she could with them, building a bond that went beyond simple friendship. But not everyone in the village was happy about the dragons. Some of the elders felt threatened by these alien creatures. They argued that having dragons would bring danger to the village, that it was unnatural to raise beasts from unknown worlds. They held council meetings late into the night, debating whether Luna should be forced to release the dragons or send them away. Luna's parents stood by her, but she could see the worry in their eyes. She knew that the time would come when she would have to make a choice. The choice came sooner than anyone expected. One morning, travelers arrived at the village from the Northern Territories. They brought news that spread through the community like wildfire. The Zyrax had arrived, These alien invaders from beyond the stars had conquered 3 neighboring regions in less than 2 months. They were insectoid creatures, terrible and powerful, with weapons that seemed like magic to the elves who had never known real warfare. The Xyrax were not like other invaders. They did not negotiate or offer terms. They conquered, enslaved, and moved on. The northern villages that had refused to surrender were burning. The surviving people had fled south, bringing only what they could carry. That night, Luna stood alone on a cliff overlooking the valley where her village rested peacefully. Below her, the lights twinkled like stars fallen to earth. She knew that this peace would not last long. The Xyrax would reach her home eventually. And when they did, her people would need to fight. She thought about her dragons, now nearly full-grown. Ember was as tall as a horse at the shoulder, with wings that could carry him high into the sky. Frost was slightly smaller but seemed more powerful somehow, as if her reserved nature held hidden strength. Together they might be able to make a difference. Luna called out into the night, and both dragons came to her, landing softly on either side of where she stood. She ran her hands over their warm scales, feeling the pulse of their heartbeats beneath her fingers. In that moment, she made a silent promise to both Ember and Frost. She promised that she would protect them, train them, and together they would stand against the darkness coming from the stars. She did not know if they would survive what was coming. She did not know if her village would be here in a month or if it would be ash and ruins like the villages to the north. But she knew that she could not hide, and she could not surrender. The girl who had always wanted to explore the world beyond her forest was about to get her wish, but not in the way she had ever imagined. As the 3 of them stood on the cliff together looking out at the stars above, Luna felt the weight of destiny settling on her shoulders. The easy days of her childhood were over. The time of warriors and battles was beginning, and she would face it with her dragons beside her come what may. The morning light was just beginning to touch the eastern horizon when Luna heard the first explosion. It came from the direction of the northern pass, far enough away that the sound took time to reach her ears. She was already awake, having not slept at all during the night. Ember and Frost were alert too, their muscles tense and ready. Luna had spent the previous day gathering supplies and preparing for what was coming. She had taken some of her parents' old weapons from storage, items that had not been used in centuries. The elves were not a warlike people, but they had not always been peaceful. In their ancient past, they had fought fierce battles against creatures and enemies long forgotten by history. The weapons reflected that old strength, beautiful and deadly at the same time. She had also gathered other materials. Pieces of the alien ship that had brought the dragons still remained hidden in various locations around the village. Luna had collected what she could, studying each piece carefully. Some of the technology she could understand through pure logic and experimentation. Other pieces remained mysteries, but she kept them anyway, believing that knowledge might come in useful. Now, as the explosion faded into silence and then was followed by another, Luna moved quickly through the village. Most of the elves were still sleeping, unaware that the enemy was finally approaching. She made her way to her parents' home, a small cottage at the edge of the residential area. Her mother was already awake, standing in the doorway with a packed bag in her hands. Her father stood beside her, looking older than Luna remembered from just days before. They both watched as she approached with Ember and Frost walking beside her like loyal guards. "Your father and I are going to help organize the evacuation," her mother said. "We will lead the people who cannot fight to the deep caves in the mountains. It is not safe here anymore." "You know this," Luna nodded. She did know it. She had accepted this truth since the night she stood on the cliff with her dragons. But acceptance did not mean she had to run. Her parents understood this too, though it brought them pain to acknowledge it. "Take the dragons and go to the eastern border," her father said. "There are humans there, refugees from the coastal cities. They have weapons and knowledge of warfare. Find their leader and tell him that the elves are willing to fight. Tell him we are not as helpless as he might think." Luna embraced her parents, holding them tightly for a long moment. She did not know if she would see them alive again. The thought was terrifying and strengthening at the same time. She let them go and watched as they hurried toward the village center where people were beginning to gather, sensing that something was wrong. The journey to the eastern border took 3 days of hard travel. Luna moved through the forests with Ember and Frost using paths that only the elves knew about. They avoided the main roads where Zyrax forces might be patrolling. The dragons were learning to move silently, and Luna was proud of how quickly they adapted to the needs of stealth and survival. On the second night of travel, Luna saw smoke rising in the distance. Her village was burning. She stood very still for a long time, watching the smoke drift up into the dark sky. Ember came to her side and rested his head gently against her shoulder, as if offering comfort. Frost made a low sound in her throat, a rumbling that seemed to express anger and sadness all at once. Luna did not cry. Tears would not help anyone. Instead, she let the pain transform into something harder, something that burned like the fire consuming her home. That fire became determination. That pain became purpose. When they finally reached the human settlement in the east, Luna was met with immediate suspicion and several weapons pointed in her direction. The humans had never seen an elf before, and the dragons were completely unexpected. But one man, a weathered soldier with scars across his face and a patch over one eye, stepped forward and lowered his weapon. "My name is Marcus," he said. "I am the leader here. Those are incredible creatures you have brought to us." Luna explained everything. She told him about the eggs, about raising the dragons, about the choice she had made to fight rather than hide. Marcus listened carefully, occasionally asking questions but mostly just taking in her story. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. Then he walked slowly around Ember and Frost, examining them from every angle. He had the look of someone who understood warfare, someone who could see potential and power in things others might miss. "How much can you teach them to fight?" he finally asked. "Everything," Luna replied. "They are intelligent beings, not just animals. They think and they reason. They will learn anything I teach them." Marcus smiled, and it was a smile that held both hope and desperation. He led Luna to a tent that served as his command center. There he showed her maps of the region and positions where the Zyrax forces were known to be gathering. "If what you say is true about these dragons, then we might have a chance," Marcus said. "We have been losing ground, falling back, losing people. The Zyrax technology is superior to ours, but we are not without resources. And if you can train those creatures into combat effectiveness, we could change the tide of this war." Over the following weeks, Luna began the real training. She worked with Ember and Frost in a hidden valley far from the settlement, teaching them not just to fight but to fight with purpose and strategy. She taught them to work together, each dragon understanding the other's role in battle. She taught them to recognize danger and respond appropriately. Marcus provided her with information about Zyrax tactics and weapons systems. Luna studied this information carefully and began to develop methods to counter it. She worked with the human soldiers, learning about their weapons and tactics. Slowly, she began to understand how modern warfare worked, how to use terrain and timing and numbers to overcome superior firepower. Ember became a master of direct assault. His natural fire combined with his speed and strength made him ideal for striking quickly and powerfully. Frost developed into a precision fighter, using her intelligence and agility to identify weak points and strike with devastating accuracy. And Luna became something more than just a trainer or a scout. She became a warrior. She worked with the human soldiers, learning to use their weapons, understanding their strategies. Some of the humans were skeptical about taking orders from an elf, but Marcus backed her without question. Slowly, through demonstration and success in small skirmishes, she earned their respect. The first real battle came when a Zyrax scout force was reported approaching the settlement. Luna knew this was the moment. Everything she had prepared for, everything she and her dragons had trained for was about to be tested in real combat. She checked her equipment one final time. Her bow, strengthened with alien materials from the crashed ship. Her armor, a combination of elf-crafted metal and salvaged Zyrax technology. Her dragons ready and alert beside her. Marcus placed a hand on her shoulder. "You do not have to do this," he said. "You could take the dragons and flee. Start a new life somewhere safe." Luna shook her head. "No safe place exists," she said. "Not as long as the Zyrax continue to conquer. The only safety comes from standing and fighting for what is right." She turned to face the direction where the Zyrax forces were approaching. Ember and Frost moved into position beside her. In the distance, she could hear the sound of alien engines powering up. The moment had come. The girl from the peaceful forest was about to become a warrior, and beside her, two dragons that should never have existed in this world would show the Zyrax what true power meant. The first thing Luna noticed was not the sound or the sight of the Zyrax forces, but the vibration. The ground trembled beneath her feet as three massive alien ships descended toward the settlement. They were smaller than some of the others reported in the north, but still impressive in their size and power. Each one was sleek and predatory, covered in weapons that glowed with an eerie blue light. Luna took a deep breath and raised her hand. Around her, the human soldiers crouched in their defensive positions hidden among the rocks and ruins of the abandoned settlement. This was not their home they were defending, but a location chosen specifically for the defensive advantages it offered. The terrain was rocky and broken, with natural barriers and places to take cover. Marcus had positioned his forces carefully. They were outnumbered at least 3-1, but they had the element of surprise and knowledge of the land. Luna had convinced him that the best strategy was not to meet the Zyrax force in open combat, but to strike at them from positions of strength, wearing them down over time. The Zyrax ships landed in a triangular formation, kicking up dust and debris as their engines powered down. Landing ramps began to lower from their hulls, and Luna could see the first of the alien soldiers beginning to emerge. The Zyrax were truly alien in appearance. Their bodies were insectoid, covered in a hard exoskeleton that reflected light like polished chitin. They stood nearly 8 feet tall with multiple arms and limbs that moved with unsettling precision. Their heads seemed mostly composed of large compound eyes that could see in multiple spectrums of light. They carried weapons that looked more organic than mechanical, as if the guns themselves were living parts of their bodies. Luna waited, counting the soldiers as they descended from the ships. She waited until nearly 100 of them had gathered in the open space below her position. She waited until they began to move forward toward where they thought the human settlement was located. Then she released Ember. The dragon burst from his hiding place with a roar that echoed across the valley. His wings spread wide and he climbed rapidly into the sky above the Zyrax forces. The alien soldiers immediately looked up, and Luna could see the confusion in their movements. They had never encountered anything like a dragon before. Ember released a stream of fire that mixed natural flame with the plasma technology that Luna had taught him to activate. The burning inferno descended on the alien soldiers, and for a moment, everything was chaos. The Zyrax formation broke apart as soldiers tried to scatter. Some of them fell, their exoskeletons offering less protection than they might have hoped against dragon fire. The human soldiers opened fire at the same moment. Arrows flew through the air, combined with bullets from weapons salvaged and repaired from various sources. The Zyrax, caught between the assault from above and the assault from the ground, suffered heavy losses in those first critical moments. But the aliens were not unprepared for long. The remaining soldiers began to move with tactical precision, dividing their attention between the dragon in the sky and the human threats on the ground. Weapons fired upward, trying to bring Ember down. Weapons fired toward the human positions, forcing the soldiers to duck and take cover. Luna watched everything carefully, noting how the Zyrax responded to each threat. She saw how they adapted, how they repositioned their forces. It was like watching a dance, a deadly dance where one mistake meant death. She turned to Frost and made a subtle gesture. The blue dragon moved silently around the edge of the battle, using the broken terrain to stay hidden. Luna had taught Frost a specific strategy, something the dragon was perfectly suited for. As more Zyrax soldiers emerged from the ships and began to organize a counterattack, Frost struck. She used her speed and precision to target the alien soldiers who were directing the operations, the ones who seemed to be commanding the others. Her teeth, reinforced with alien alloy through a process Luna had spent months perfecting, raked across the chest of one of these leaders. The effect was immediate and devastating. Without clear direction, the Zyrax soldiers began to show signs of confusion. Their carefully organized response became less coordinated. Some of them still fought effectively, but the unified strategy that had made them so dangerous was beginning to crumble. Luna saw her opportunity. She pulled her bow and fired a specialized arrow, one that had been modified with technology salvaged from the alien ship. The arrow contained a small explosive charge that would detonate on impact. Designed specifically to take advantage of weak points in Zyrax armor that Luna had identified through weeks of study. The arrow found its target, and an alien soldier collapsed. Luna fired again and then again, each shot placed with deadly precision. The other human soldiers, seeing that the tide was turning, began to press their advantage. They moved from their defensive positions and began to close in on the Xyrax forces. But then something unexpected happened. One of the alien soldiers, larger than the others and bearing strange markings on its exoskeleton, stepped forward and released a blast of energy that sent half a dozen humans flying backward. This alien was different, faster and more dangerous than the regular soldiers. Luna recognized immediately that this was likely an officer or warrior of higher rank. She made a quick decision. She whistled a command to Ember and Frost, pulling them back from their direct assaults. The dragons retreated, gaining height and distance. Luna sprinted across the battlefield, moving with the speed and grace of her elven heritage. She ran directly toward the powerful alien officer, her bow raised and ready. The officer turned to face her, and for a moment human and alien locked eyes. The officer made a sound that might have been communication, or might have been laughter. It attacked, moving with surprising speed. Luna barely managed to roll out of the way as one of its clawed limbs lashed out at her. The claw raked across her armor, leaving deep gouges in the metal. She came up firing, her arrow striking true at a gap in the alien's armor. The officer shrieked, a sound that was almost deafening in its intensity. It recovered quickly, though, and came at her again. Luna moved backward, still trying to maintain her distance while looking for an opening. Then Ember arrived, swooping down from above with his wings folded close to his body. The dragon knocked the alien officer sideways with a powerful blow from his body. The impact sent the officer tumbling across the ground. Frost was right behind Ember, and she came in from a different angle, striking with precision, while the alien officer was recovering from Ember's attack. The combined assault from two dragons was too much for even this powerful alien to handle. The officer went down, moving only weakly before finally going still. With their leader fallen and their forces suffering heavy casualties, the remaining Xyrax soldiers began to retreat toward their ships. Luna gave the order for the human forces to hold their fire, to let the aliens escape. Marcus approached her, breathing hard from the battle. "Why did you let them go?" he asked. "We could have destroyed all of them." Luna watched as the alien ships began to power up their engines. "Because we needed them to report what happened here," she said. "We needed the Xyrax to know that we are not helpless, that we have the will and the power to resist. Fear is as much a weapon as any gun or dragonfire." The ships lifted off, rising into the sky with a sound like distant thunder. Within minutes, they had disappeared beyond the atmosphere, leaving behind only the marks of their brief and violent presence on the landscape. The humans cheered, celebrating their victory. It was their first real success against the Xyrax in weeks of fighting, but Luna did not celebrate. She ran her hands over Ember and Frost, checking them carefully for injuries. The dragons were unhurt, but they were tired. The battle had taken its toll on all of them. Luna sat down on a rock, allowing herself to feel the exhaustion that suddenly threatened to overwhelm her. They had won this battle, but the war was far from over. Somewhere in the distance, the Xyrax Queen had received the report of this defeat, and Luna knew that this victory would bring more danger, not less. The aliens would return with better strategies and better preparation. But for now, in this moment, Luna allowed herself to rest. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and new dangers. Tonight she would rest with her dragons, knowing that they had done something important. They had proven that resistance was possible. 2 weeks passed after the first battle. In those 2 weeks, Luna learned more about warfare than she had in her entire life. Marcus taught her tactics and strategy. The human soldiers taught her discipline and teamwork. Her own dragons taught her about patience and the importance of understanding your opponent before striking. The Xyrax did return, as Luna had known they would. But they came differently this time. Instead of sending ground troops in straightforward assault formations, they began using more complex tactics. They sent multiple smaller forces to attack the settlement from different directions simultaneously. They learned quickly from the humans and dragons, adapting their strategies each time they engaged. In the first of these new battles, Luna nearly died. She had been tracking a Xyrax reconnaissance team, trying to learn their patterns and predict where they would strike next. The aliens were more cautious now, using technology that could detect her heat signature and movement. An officer had caught her alone, away from her dragons and her human allies. For several long minutes, Luna found herself in direct combat with an alien that was stronger, faster, and better armed than she was. Her weapons barely penetrated its armor. Its weapons cut through her defenses and left deep wounds across her shoulders and sides. She was bleeding heavily and beginning to slow when she heard a familiar roar. Frost had been tracking Luna just as Luna had been. Tracking the Xyrax, the blue dragon descended on the alien officer with a fury that Luna had never seen before. When the dragon realized that Luna was in danger, something had shifted in Frost. The usually calculated and precise dragon became something wild and protective. She drove the alien officer away from Luna, forcing it back across the rocky terrain. Ember arrived moments later, having sensed through their bond that both Luna and Frost were in danger. The two dragons worked together with perfect coordination, herding the alien officer into a canyon. By the time Luna managed to scramble to higher ground and get her bow ready, the officer had already fallen to their combined assault. Marcus found Luna lying against a rock, her wounds serious but not fatal. He brought medical supplies and spent hours carefully treating her injuries. As he worked, he told her stories of other humans who had stood against invaders, who had refused to surrender even when the odds seemed impossible. "You are like them," he said, as he wrapped bandages around her wounds. "You have something in you that cannot be broken. That is what the Xyrax do not understand about us. We can be hurt. We can be damaged. But we do not break." Over the next week, as Luna recovered, she began to study the reports of Xyrax movements more carefully. She noticed a pattern emerging. The Xyrax were consolidating their forces in the northern regions. They seemed to be preparing for something larger, something more coordinated than the small skirmishes and raids that had been happening. Luna shared her observations with Marcus. Together, they went over the maps and the intelligence reports from other human settlements. The pattern became clear. The Xyrax were gathering their forces for a massive assault. They planned to crush all remaining human and elf resistance in one coordinated strike. "We cannot win if they bring their full force against us here," Marcus said, studying the maps with a frown etched deeply into his weathered face. Luna looked at the maps and at the images of the Xyrax forces gathering in the northern regions. She thought about her people, hidden in the caves under the mountains. She thought about the other human settlements spread across the region. She thought about all the beings who depended on her to do something, to find some way to turn the tide of this war. Then an idea formed in her mind. It was dangerous, almost certainly suicidal, but it was the only plan she could think of that might actually work. "What if we did not wait for them to attack us?" she said slowly. "What if we went to them instead?" Marcus looked at her like she had lost her mind. "You propose to take our small force and attack the full strength of the Xyrax military. This is madness," Luna shook her head. "Not attack with our entire force. Just 3 of us. Me and my 2 dragons. We strike at their command center, the ship that controls their operations in this region. If we can destroy or disable their leadership, their coordinated assault will fall apart." "It is too risky," Marcus said. "You would be flying into the heart of their strongest position." But it was the only plan that made sense, and Marcus knew it. After several long discussions and much argument, he agreed to support her plan. While Luna and her dragons made their attempt against the Xyrax command center, Marcus would lead the human and elf forces in a coordinated assault against the Xyrax ground troops. If Luna succeeded in disrupting their communications and leadership, the human forces might be able to push them back. If she failed, at least the attempt would buy time for some of the population to escape. The night before the attack, Luna prepared herself mentally and physically. She checked her weapons one final time. She meditated with her dragons, feeling the bond between them strengthen as they all focused their intention on the task ahead. Ember and Frost could sense the danger that awaited them. But they did not hesitate or show fear. Instead, they moved closer to Luna, offering their presence as comfort and assurance. Luna understood in that moment that these dragons were not just her companions. They were her family, and family stood together, no matter how impossible the odds seemed. The next morning, as the sun rose over the eastern mountains, Luna and her 2 dragons took flight. They flew high, using clouds and atmospheric disturbances to hide their movement from Xyrax sensors. Luna had spent weeks studying the alien technology, learning how their detection systems worked and how to avoid them. As they flew, Luna found herself thinking about her journey. She had begun this adventure as a simple scout, a curious girl from the peaceful forests who wanted to see the world beyond her home. Now she was flying toward almost certain death, carrying the hopes of thousands of people with her. She thought about her parents, hidden in the caves. She wondered if they had gotten the message that she was fighting, that their daughter had become a warrior. She thought about Marcus and the human soldiers who had become her friends. She thought about all the beings in the settlements they were trying to protect, and she looked at Ember and Frost, flying steadily beside her. These creatures, born from eggs found in a crashed ship, had become the most important things in her life. They had given her purpose. They had given her strength. Now she would fly with them into the very heart of the enemy, and together they would find out if they truly had the power to change the course of this war. The command ship appeared on the horizon, a massive structure that floated in the sky like a metallic island. It was surrounded by smaller ships and defensive platforms. It was guarded by more firepower than Luna had ever seen gathered in one place. But Luna did not hesitate. She let out a cry that Ember and Frost had been waiting for. The dragons responded instantly, diving downward with their wings folded close to their bodies. They accelerated rapidly, moving faster than they had ever moved before. The wind tore at Luna's hair and her armor, but she held firm, her weapons ready. The Zyrax defense systems began to activate as they detected the approaching threat. Energy weapons fired upward, trying to intercept the dragons. But Luna had trained Ember and Frost to be unpredictable, to move in patterns that were impossible to predict. The first volley of fire missed them completely. They were going in. There was no turning back now. Whatever happened next would determine the fate of worlds. Ember and Frost moved like fluid lightning through the barrage of alien fire. They twisted and turned, each movement perfectly calculated to avoid the energy weapons tracking them through the sky. Luna had taught them this dance through weeks of practice and training. The dragons did not think about the movements anymore. They simply acted, their bodies responding instinctively to the threats around them. Ember released a burst of his combined fire and plasma as they approached the outer defensive platforms. The alien weapons went silent as their operators scrambled to respond to the unexpected assault from such a powerful creature. Frost moved in a different pattern, using her speed and precision to strike at the sensor arrays that were trying to track their position. The main command ship was massive up close, far larger than it had appeared from a distance. Luna could see multiple levels and structures jutting out from its main hull. She knew from the intelligence reports that the ship's bridge, where the commanding officer would be located, was positioned in the central tower that rose from the ship's uppermost section. Landing was not an option. There was nowhere safe to land, and the moment she and her dragons touched down, they would lose the advantage of mobility and speed. Instead, Luna had to find another way inside. As Ember and Frost continued their assault on the external defenses, drawing the alien fire and attention away from a single point, Luna guided Ember toward a large opening in the ship's hull. It was an exhaust port, probably far too dangerous under normal circumstances. But Luna had studied the ship's design, and she believed, or at least hoped, that they could make it. Ember dove toward the opening with Luna holding tight to his neck. The heat from the exhaust washed over them as they entered the shaft, but Luna had prepared for this. She and Ember had trained with heat and fire until they could both tolerate conditions that would have killed most living beings. They emerged into a massive engineering chamber. Alien workers scattered at the sight of a dragon appearing in their space. Some of them tried to attack, but Luna's arrows found them quickly and efficiently. This was not a battle, she told herself. This was a surgical strike. Every moment they spent in combat was a moment that Frost had to spend alone defending them from the overwhelming firepower above. Luna guided Ember through the corridors of the ship, using her knowledge of the design to navigate toward the bridge. They encountered resistance several times. Zyrax soldiers tried to stop them, but they had not counted on facing a dragon that could move through confined spaces with deadly grace. Ember was fast enough to react to threats before they could develop, and Luna's arrows were accurate enough to take down any alien that managed to get a clean shot. They encountered a sealed door that would not open. Luna did not hesitate. She placed an explosive charge, one that she had created from salvaged alien technology combined with elements from her world. The explosion was perfectly calculated, powerful enough to open the door, but not so powerful that it would damage the systems behind it. The bridge of the Zyrax command ship was not what Luna had expected. She had thought she would find a vast chamber filled with technology and aliens. Instead, she found a single room where everything was controlled through biological interfaces. The ship itself seemed to be a living thing to some degree, with organic tubes and structures that pulsed with an internal rhythm. And standing at the center of the bridge was the Xyrax Queen. Luna had not expected to encounter the Queen here. She had expected a high-ranking officer, possibly one of the military leaders she had fought before, but the Queen herself had come to supervise this operation. She was magnificent and terrible, standing nearly 10 feet tall with an exoskeleton that seemed to shimmer with internal energy. For a moment, neither of them moved. Luna and the Queen regarded each other across the space of the bridge. The Queen made a sound that resonated through the room, a low vibration that Luna felt in her bones. "You are the one who commands the dragons," the Queen said. Her voice did not come through audio channels but directly into Luna's mind. It was a form of communication that bypassed the need for words altogether. "I am," Luna replied, standing as tall as she could beside Ember. "I have come to ask you to leave this world, to stop your conquest and take your people elsewhere." The Queen made a sound that might have been laughter. "You are small. You are fragile. Your dragons are impressive, but they are nothing compared to the power of the Xyrax. Why should I listen to anything you have to say?" Luna felt fear in that moment, true and absolute fear, but she did not let it stop her. Fear was something to acknowledge and move past, not something to submit to. "Because you are wise enough to recognize that some things are worth more than conquest," Luna said. "I have studied the messages left in the ruins of the ship that brought my dragons here. I know what your people were before you became conquerors. I know that you were explorers and builders. Something changed you. Something made you believe that the only way to survive was to conquer and enslave." The Queen was silent for a long moment. Around them, the sound of battle continued outside the ship. Luna could feel Frost fighting above them, could sense through their bond that the blue dragon was growing tired. "I will make you an offer," Luna continued. "Leave this world. Take your forces and go. In return, I will not destroy this ship and kill everyone aboard it." "I will not destroy you." It was an empty threat, and they both knew it. Luna had no power to destroy the massive vessel. She was one small being with two dragons, but what mattered was what the Queen believed. And the Queen, for all her power and might, seemed to be considering the words. "You have spirit," the Queen finally said. "You have the courage of warriors from my own past. This is rare among the species we have encountered." "Then you understand," Luna said. "You understand that some beings cannot be broken, cannot be conquered. You understand that freedom and the will to survive means more than any conquest can offer." The Queen moved slightly, a gesture that seemed almost like a nod. She reached out toward one of the biological interfaces and Luna tensed, ready to attack. But instead of activating weapons, the Queen disabled them. One by one, the defensive systems of the ship powered down. The energy weapons stopped firing. The alarms ceased their wailing. "I will order the retreat," the Queen said. "Your world will be marked as protected. The Xyrax will not return here. But know this, small warrior. You have earned the respect of a power that few beings in the galaxy dare to challenge. This may prove to be a blessing or a curse. The universe will decide." Luna did not wait for further conversation. She turned Ember around and raced back through the corridors of the command ship, retracing their path back to the engineering chamber and the exhaust port they had used to enter. As they emerged into the open sky, Luna felt the shock and confusion in all the Xyrax forces below them. The ships were receiving contradictory orders, some telling them to continue the assault, others telling them to stand down. The command structure was in chaos. Frost was still engaged with defensive platforms when Ember burst out of the exhaust port. But the moment the Blue Dragon saw that the larger ship was powering down its weapons, she broke off her attack and rose higher into the sky. Luna guided both dragons away from the command ship and toward open sky, where they would be less vulnerable. Below them, she could see the human and elf forces beginning to advance, sensing that something had changed. The coordinated assault that the Xyrax had been preparing was falling apart. As the three of them flew away from the battle, Luna looked back at the massive Xyrax fleet. She expected to see them regrouping for a new assault, preparing to resume their conquest. Instead, she saw them beginning to power up their engines. Preparing for departure, the Queen had kept her word. 3 hours later, the last of the Xyrax ships rose into the sky and disappeared beyond the atmosphere. leaving behind only the marks of their occupation on the landscape. The settlements began to emerge from their hiding places. The people who had been in caves and shelters came out into the sunlight, hardly daring to believe that the invasion was truly over. Luna landed with Ember and Frost in a wide open space where Marcus and his soldiers were gathering. When she climbed down from Ember's back, Marcus ran to her, sweeping her up in an embrace before setting her back down and examining her carefully for injuries. "You are alive," he said, and there was wonder in his voice. "I did not think you would survive." "Neither did I," Luna admitted. "But sometimes the impossible becomes possible when you refuse to surrender to it." In the weeks and months that followed, Luna worked with both the elves and the humans to rebuild what the Zyrax had destroyed. She taught the ways of her people to the human soldiers. They taught her their ways in return. And Ember and Frost became symbols of hope, living proof that unexpected allies could come together to achieve the impossible. Luna never returned to her old life in the forest. She remained a warrior and a protector, standing between the peaceful people and a dangerous galaxy. But she was no longer alone. She had her dragons, and she had found a family in the humans and elves who fought beside her.